everyone, this is Scott from Forgot to Grow Up. Welcome to our latest Rewatch Revisit review, our video series where I rewatch a movie I haven't seen in a while, talk about my thoughts after revisiting it, and then give you guys my review for the movie. So today I'm going to be talking about Bad Boys from 1995, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence as two detectives investigating a case of stolen heroin while also protecting a witness. And they all have to do this under the time constraints of, internal affairs and the heroin being sold off. So it's a very fast-paced movie, and it still holds up in my opinion. I still really enjoyed it, and I rewatched it because we've got another Bad Boys for Life coming out in the next week or two, and so that prompted me to be like, yeah, it's time to revisit this. I haven't rewatched them in a while. It's been at least probably 5 to 10 years since I've watched this first Bad Boys, and that's not anything against the movie. It's just there's so much to watch and keep up with, and so this one is one of those ones that I watched a lot growing up because it's been out since '95, so it's just been out pretty much my entire life, and I've always been a big fan of Will Smith and big fan of action comedies, particularly when I was younger. When I was a kid growing up, I was a huge fan of action comedy. You give me some action, give me a little I'm on board for it. And so upon rewatching and revisiting this Bad Boys, I still got that same feeling of just loving an action comedy, particularly with these two at the helm. I love a Will Smith action comedy. I like a Martin Lawrence action comedy. And you throw those two together and I'm like, oh, whew, thank you. They're dynamic. I just love that you can it almost feels like they're real brothers or like real friends who have just been through a lot of shit together and just are tired of each other's shit but still love each other. And so just rewatching this, you still get that same feel that's one of those things that holds up about this movie that makes it hold up, is that this authentic feeling relationship between the two detectives of played by Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, and just the dynamic they get together, they have together, and just between the bickering like old married couple and just kicking ass, having these different little fun little setups they have for people where they're pretending to argue when somebody pulls a gun on them, and then they turn the tables and it's like bam, we've always got each other's back. And so I just love this movie and love these movies in general. The two Bad Boys movies that we've gotten up to now, and there's going to be another one. I'm sure it won't disappoint me too much, but I haven't seen it yet. That being said, though, but yeah, overall, I just really, really enjoyed this rewatch. I feel this movie does a great job of holding up, considering it's 15 years old. How well the action and stuff still holds up as this action comedy cop movie where they're investigating drugs and murder and all that fun stuff. The pretty basic cop kind of story of, they're investigating a case, but the fact that we got Will Smith and Martin Lawrence as the two detectives, that's what really kept me at least engaged in it. But then balancing it out with great action set pieces that I think still hold up, because this was before CGI was ever even being touched. Everything was pretty much entirely done practically, and why not? This takes place in the real world. They just stole some drugs and they're investigating that, so it doesn't need to have anything crazy in it. So that's what I particularly like about this first one too. It's, even though it's got some pretty big action set pieces, it's not like too over the top like we get nowadays. And so that's a fun thing to see in a revisit, is how I still enjoy this level of action, even though it's not world-ending stuff that we get in Marvel and other movies these days. Marvel obviously isn't the greatest comparison to a Bad Boys movie because they're not even anything alike. But we don't get action comedies like this as much anymore because Marvel, I feel, has kind of filled that gap. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about my rewatch revisit review of Bad Boys. But yes, I felt that this movie held up really well. The action scenes were kind of explosive and fun. Explosive being a literal descriptive word in this case, but it's Michael Bay. It was in the 90s. It's what he did. And so I still think it was great. The comedy, I think, still holds up pretty well. These two, it's a lot based off of, like I've said, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. They hold this movie up. This wouldn't be a movie without the two of them and the dynamic they have. And so that's obviously the thing that I latch on to and really enjoy about this movie, and upon rewatching it, just what I still loved about it. So yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts upon revisiting it. Beyond just loving it and really enjoying a lot of the different things we get. It's like I said, it's all based around the dynamic between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's characters, because they just I just want to see how they react and interact with one another in every different scenario. Sometimes Mike's a little bit more calm, sometimes it's Marcus, and it's rarely Marcus, to be honest, but still, I just kind of enjoy it, and particularly this one was a great kind of intro to these two characters, and it just, got me to watch the second one definitely back when I was younger and be excited for this upcoming one. So yes, after rewatching or revisiting it, I still love it as much as I did when I was a kid. So yeah, on to the review section. The review section, I usually like to actually talk about the critics and audience reviews before I kind of give my own personal review, just to kind of get a gauge of where everyone's sitting. Am I sitting more on the critic side, or am I sitting more on the audience? I tend to be more on the audience, or somewhere in between, and I like to think of myself as somebody who tries to bridge that gap between those two. But that being said, so a Rotten Tomatoes score for Bad Boys from the critics is a 42%, which hurts my heart a little bit. It makes me a little sad, but critics never really love Michael Bay stuff at all, and one of the things, the consensus I think I read, was that critics felt that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith had a great dynamic, but there wasn't much story to this beyond just a bunch of explosions and stuff. And to that, I was like, well, the story is them investigating a case, and they investigate it. What more story do we want in this? So that, I'm like, clearly I don't agree with the critics. The audience score on Rotten Tomato is a 78%. I'm definitely more on that side, even higher in my opinion, but that's a little bit of, I can be a little personal bias because I love Will Smith and Martin Lawrence in their dynamic, like I've said this whole video. And so but I'm definitely more on the audience side on this one, where I enjoyed the action and the dynamic between the two more than focusing on that there wasn't this crazy amazing story. It wasn't some intricately weaved case, a mystery of cat and mouse mystery thing. It's just there was a murder and there was some stolen heroin. They investigated it and they did an awesome job doing it, and that's what I love about this movie. So yeah, that was the Rotten Tomatoes and the audience ratings. The critics and the audience ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. The Metacritic and the IMDb pretty much go along the same thing, meaning critics don't love it as much, audiences enjoyed it more, which, like I said before, that tends to be along the lines with Michael Bay action movies. Audiences are a little bit more forgiving of having less of a complicated or intriguing story, even though I still found this one intriguing. Even revisiting it, knowing how it ends, I still enjoyed rewatching it, because movies to me are about the journey of getting through the 2 hours or however long it is, and less about where you end up at the end and what your whole overall scheme was at the end. But even though I still enjoy that sometimes. That being said, this movie still gets 2 thumbs up for me. I still love Bad Boys. I love Will Smith, love Martin Lawrence, love their dynamic, and I want to see them more. So I'm excited for Bad Boys for life and be seeing that. And so it was fun to revisit this to Bad Boys, and I'm definitely not going to wait another 5 to 10 years to rewatch it again, just because it is fun. Like I said, I really enjoy their dynamic, and it's just a good time. So I'm definitely going to be checking out also Bad Boys 2 and doing a rewatch revisit review for that as well. So be sure to check that out. I'll link that at the end of this video. But that's all my thoughts for Bad Boys 2, or my rewatch revisit review for Bad Boys 2. Be sure to let me know in the comments below what you think of the first Bad Boys movie. Do you like it? Did you never like it? Is it one of those kind of fun nostalgia 90s movies that you like to watch, or do you just have no love for it whatsoever? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thanks again for joining me today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and have a good one.